Hello everyone, welcome to this Age of Alchemy battle report, where today we will be playing a cargo recovery game where we're looking to use these 3 bits of rubble as the objectives. I am going to be playing the Council of the Cold Knight, as you can see over here, and my opponent behind the camera is going to be playing the Long Drawn Death, as you can see here. For the Council of the Cold Knight, we have an Alchemist with basic weapon, an Apprentice with basic weapon, a Mercenary with basic weapon, a Mercenary with basic weapon and a shield, 2 Novices with basic weapon and buckler, and a healer with a spear. For the Long Drawn Death, we have an Alchemist with basic weapon, an Apprentice with staff, we have 2 Cultists with bludgeons, we have a Cultist with basic weapon, we have a Fanatic with great weapon, and we have a marksperson with crossbow and dagger. First, I'm going to roll for the concoctions for the Council of the Cold Knight, and I will put up on screen what I've got there. For the Long Drawn Death, my opponent is now going to roll their concoctions, and we will put up on screen what they've got as well. As we can see, that is me and my opponent deployed. I have my Alchemist, Novice and healer over here. Then we have my Mercenary with shield, my other Novice, my Apprentice and my other Mercenary. Then on my opponent's side of things, we have a marksperson, an Apprentice and a Cultist. We then have another Cultist, the Fanatic, their Alchemist and their other Cultist. Finally, as you can see, we have the objectives placed 1, 2 and 3, where they are 8 inches in from the table edges and 8 inches away at least from each other. Start of turn 1, we're going to roll for initiative. I'll go first and I get a 5. My opponent gets a 3, so they'll be going second with 2 reaction tokens and I'll be going first. Before I could even move a single model, my opponent has decided that their Alchemist over here is going to use a reaction because they have they have at least one ranged weapon Alchemy, and they're going to target my Mercenary after he moves with their number 5, which is the Vine Secretion Dart. So I'm going to actually move my Mercenary over here, so he's behind this wall, just make it up to there. And my opponent they are not within short range, and I'm also, as we discussed before rolling the camera, I will actually be getting hard cover as well. So they're going to be hitting on a 5 in total. Unfortunately, no, they've missed. So after that reaction, we finished off the rest of the movement. My healer, Alchemist and Novice have all moved up around here. My Mercenary, as we saw, moved up to the wall. My Novice, other Mercenary and Apprentice are over in this corner. My opponent's marksperson has made his way up onto the roof. The Cultist and Apprentice have moved up here. The Cultist and Fanatic have moved up to here. This Alchemist is unable to do anything because they reacted, and in here the Cultist jumped in to get onto the objective. For my shooting phase, I am going to use one thing only, and that is my Apprentice is going to use a piece of Alchemy. They're going to use Glacial Shield, which is one of my number 5s. I did roll 3 of them. And they're going to use that on the Mercenary, so on a 2+. Nope, he does not get the Glacial Shield. For my opponent's half of the shooting phase, this model up here, the marksperson, we had a look. There's only one model in line of sight. It's this model. But because they have moved with a crossbow and they're getting the benefit of hard cover, they won't be able to hit them. They would need a 7, which means impossible to hit. So my opponent is instead going to only use some Alchemy, and they're going to use their number 6, the Clouded Fly Globe, I believe, or Clouded Poison Globe actually. They're going to throw that number 6 up to 12 inches, pick a point, and I believe they're picking this point right here, yes, which they can draw line of sight to. So it's going to go off there if they roll high enough for it to go off, which I believe is on a 3+. So roll and see what happens. They both are alchemy failed this turn. That's good. So that is the end of turn 1. We would go into the combat phase, but no models are in range to actually make combat. Join us as we go into turn 2. Start of turn 2, there are no determination rolls to be made, so my opponent is going to roll for initiative. They get a 6 and I get a 3, so they'll be going first and I'll be going second with 1 reaction token. So for the start of my opponent's shooting phase, they're going to use their number 3, which is actually the clouded poisoned globe, and they're going to throw it 6 inches, which we've measured means they can get it just to here. So they're going to roll to see if it goes off on a 3+. It does. So these models here, which are within 3 inches, but we've also measured that no one else is within 3 inches, each one of them is now poisoned. So for the rest of the game, at the start of each turn, they will have to roll a dice to see if the poison affects them. So my opponent has decided that their marksperson with the crossbow here is going to fire at my novice. However, my novice is going to react, but they're not going to back away or jump down. They're actually just going to use those 3 inches to go like so. This is so it gets them away from an edge, because these areas are covered, they're not edges, and it means I'm closer so that when I want to charge later, it's a lot easier. So after that, my opponent is now going to shoot at my novice, of course. They will be hitting on a 2 because they hit on a 3 normally, they haven't moved, and I'm definitely within 4 inches. They get a 1, but they are a marksperson, so they can re-roll that. Okay, so they have hit. It's damage 4 against resistance 3, so they're getting a +1 to the dice. That's a 6. However, I have got a buckler, which means I get to roll against each of those wounds. And unfortunately, I take both. For my part of the shooting phase, my Alchemist is going to throw a Glacial Shield again at this Mercenary. Sorry, my Apprentice is going to throw it at the Mercenary. It does go off this time on a 4, so he has the Glacial Shield. So for the rest of this turn and all of the following turn, whenever he takes a wound on a 4+, he will ignore it. At the start of the charge phase, my opponent is going to move their marksperson into combat with my novice. They have 1 weapon with a dagger, 1 attack hitting on a 4, and wounding on a 5 or 6. Yep, that's enough, so they are removed from... No, hang on, tell a lie. They have a buckler on a 6. If that wasn't there, that would have been a 6. We'll get rid of him, bye-bye. And they get to roll to see how far they move, so they get to go 6 inches. My opponent has decided that they're actually going to move 2 inches this way, and then they're going to hop down to there. And that's them. So that is the end of the combat phase, because my opponent has moved all of their models in such a way that I now can't charge who I wanted to charge, and we've double checked, nobody is within, so that's it. It is on to turn 3. Start of turn 3, before we roll for initiative or anything else, I have to roll for these poison markers. So on my Apprentice, he doesn't take a wound, and on my Mercenary, he doesn't take a wound either. Start of turn 3, me and my opponent are going to roll for initiative. I'll go first. I get a 5, they get a 3, so I'll be going first, and they'll get 2 reaction tokens. End of the movement phase, my opponent decided not to react, so as we can see, my Alchemist, Healer, and Novice are over here. Their Fanatic, Cultist, and Alchemist have moved over to here. And my opponent's 2 Cultists, Apprentice, and Marksperson are over here. And then finally, my 2 Mercenaries and my Apprentice have moved back over here. For my 1 bit of alchemy for this turn, I am going to have my Alchemist use a concoction Glacial Shield. Again, I did roll 3 of these. I'm going to put it onto her. Again, it doesn't go off. For my opponent's half of the shooting phase, they're first of all going to use their Bloated Fly Globe, they're number 6, we've got it right this time, and they're going to pick a point. We've worked out that the point is actually going to be right on top of these crates here in the middle, because they can't quite see the floor because of this one, but they can see the top of the crates, so they're going to roll to see if it goes off on a 3+. It does. So they now need to roll for, we've already pre-measured because we had an idea, so we've got 1, 2, 3 models in range and nobody else. So they're going to roll for my Novice. On a 4+, they take a wound. They do. My Novice doesn't cancel it out with her Buckler, so she just takes a wound. The Healer, he'll take a wound as well, and then the Alchemist, he'll take a wound as well. So that's 1, 2, and 3. For the last bit of shooting for turn 3, my opponent is going to have their marksperson who moved up here, and they're going to fire into my Apprentice over here. We've worked out that they do have clear line of sight, so they'd only have their move penalty, which is doubled for the crossbow. They'll be hitting on a 5. Nope, unfortunately they miss. Start the combat phase. I am going to have my Novice charge into my opponent's Fanatic over here. They're going to charge in like so. Take the wound with them. They have, get some dice. They have 1 attack with their basic weapon, which will hit on a 4, which it does, and roll to wound on damage 3, resistance 3. Nope. Then they're going to also use their Buckler, which can make its own separate attack, hitting on a 4, rolling to wound on a 5 or 6, and they get a wound on the Fanatic. The Fanatic gets to swing back with their great weapon, 1 attack hitting on a 4, which does, and it is damage 6 against resistance 3, so they'll be getting +3 to this roll. That is a 7, so I've got to make one of these 6-ups or I'm out of the game. I do make one. And in quite possibly one of the strangest turn of events, this is actually the first time we've had a combat where both models have taken the same number of wounds. As stated in the rulebook, we fight a normal round of combat again, with me going first. So my first attack with the basic weapon, it hits, it doesn't wound. With the Buckler, it hits, and it does wound. So my opponent takes a wound, and then gets to attack me back. Hitting on a 4, which they do. Rolling to see if they can wound on a 6, so that would actually go up to being a 9. I've got to roll 3 6s here. Not even close, so that is me out of the game, and my opponent then rolls to see where their Fanatic goes. 3, so I'm guessing probably towards my healer at this point. Yeah, that's 3 inches, there we go. For the next charge, my healer is actually going to charge into my opponent's Fanatic. This is purely to try and shave off that last wound. They do have a hit on a 5. They hit, and then it's damage 3, resistance 3 with the spear. They get a critical, so that's my opponent taken out of the game. Then I'm going to roll my d6. I roll a 1, and they're going to shuffle an inch backwards, like so. We are now at the end of turn 3. My opponent has decided not to make any charges this turn. But as you can see going across the board, we have sort of quite spread out over this way. And because it has now become the end of this turn, he will lose the Glacial Shield. That has now ended. Start of turn 4, first thing we have to roll for is the models who are poisoned. So for my Apprentice, he's fine. For my Mercenary, he's fine. Next, I am the only one making determination rolls for this turn, so let's see what I get. 2, perfect, I'm okay. So after all that, we've now got to the initiative phase, so I'm going to roll first. Get 3, my opponent gets a 1, so they'll be going second with 2 reaction tokens. Halfway through the movement phase for myself, my opponent has decided that their marksperson is going to react against my Alchemist before they move. So they're going to take a shot at them now, which will hit on a 3 because they haven't moved. It hits, roll to wound. And unfortunately there's no wound there, so I'm just going to continue the rest of my movement. End of the movement phase, my Alchemist and Healer have moved up over here. My opponent's Alchemist and Cultist have moved up to here. Their Apprentice has moved around over here. This Cultist sort of stayed still. This marksperson reacted. And then over here in the corner we have my 2 Mercenaries and my Apprentice. For the shooting phase, the only thing I'm going to do is take away that wound because the Healer is going to heal my Alchemist. For my opponent's part of the shooting phase, they are going to have the marksperson over here who is going to fire at my Apprentice. Now, because they've already reacted in the move phase, and because I'm behind soft cover, with all the penalties, that will be -3, so they'll be only getting me on a 6. Which they do. Roll to wound, which is a wound, because that is damage 4 against resistance 3. My opponent's last bit of shooting, they're going to use their number 3, the Clouded Poison Globe, and they're going to throw it just to this fence here where they can see. On a 3+, it will go off. It does, and we've worked out that the only 2 models in range would be my Healer and my Alchemist, who are both now poisoned as well. Start of my half of the combat phase, my Alchemist is going to declare into this cultist over here, so he can just make it round like so. Take his poison marker with him. He will hit with his basic weapon on a 3, which he does, and hopefully he'll get that again for a critical wound. No, we just get a 4, which is a regular wound. And then my opponent attacks back, hitting on a 4 with their cultist. They do hit, rolling to wound. It will be a +1 for the bludgeon, so it'll be on 4 against 3, which is not a wound. So they will back away on a 3 or more, which they do. So they're going to back away 2 inches, which would need to be 2 inches that way, so they stay an inch away from their friend. The wound, and then I'm going to go 5 inches. I'm actually just going to go and position myself. Yeah, I'm just going to go back to about here. There we go. Next, my Healer is actually going to charge into my opponent's cultist, but they have already informed me they're going to react, and they want to move into here, so we've already measured that up. So I can still react. I'm not touching that barricade already, so what I'm going to do is move myself over and around, so I would get to attack first. I have 1 attack, hitting on a 5 with that spear. No, so my opponent gets to attack back, hitting on a 4, which they don't either, so they will be running away on a 3 or more, which they do, and they're going to back away. In this case, it pretty much have to be back 2 inches where they were the other side of their marker. And I'm going to roll. I'll roll a 5, and I'm going to hop back over this, and then go 2 inches that way while staying away from the Alchemist. There we go. For the last bit of charging in this turn, my opponent's cultist, it turns out, is just in range of my Alchemist, even going around that box. They're going to just charge in there like so. And roll to hit. 1 attack, hitting on a 4 with the bludgeon. However, they have successfully made a charge with the cultist, so they can re-roll that. It's still a miss, so I'm going to attack back, hitting on a 3. We'll try that again. Okay, so I fail, but I do run away on a 2, and I get away, so I'm just going to back myself up against these boxes, and then my opponent's going to roll a dice and see where they end up. With 2 inches, I'm guessing they're moving back towards the objective. Yeah, that's fine. So we are now at the end of turn 4. At the moment, we're kind of trying to fight and contest over this objective. This one here, my opponent clearly has, and then this one over here, I am in possession of. First thing in turn 5, I actually have to roll 1, 2, and then 3, 4 poisons. So we're going to go for the Apprentice first. He takes a wound, so we'll give him 2. And then my Mercenary doesn't take a wound. Then we come over to the Alchemist, who doesn't, and the Healer, who also doesn't take a wound. Now that that's out of the way, we're going to move on to the determination roll. Again, I'm the only one who has to make one. And I get a 3, so I'm okay this turn. Now we're on to turn 5 initiative. My opponent's going to roll first. They get a 1. I get a 2. So I'll be going first, and they'll be going second with a reaction token. So we come to the end of turn 5's movement phase. My Alchemist and Healer have moved around here. My opponent's 2 Cultists and Alchemist have sort of hopped around the other side of the building here. Their Apprentice has moved up to here. A Cultist and Marksperson up to face off against my Mercenary. I have my Alchemist hiding in the back, and then my other Mercenary over here in the corner. The only bit of shooting I've got, because again my opponent is too far away for my Solidify, is the Healer is going to heal that wound off himself. My opponent's Apprentice is going to use up the last concoction that they have, which is the Vine Secretion Dart, and they're going to fire it over here at my Mercenary who is in the open. He, in this case, is going to need a 3 because it'd be a 2 normally, but they've moved. So 3 to hit, which they don't. Last bit of shooting from my opponent is going to be their marksperson into my mercenary. They have moved, so they'd be at -2 with the crossbow, but they are within 4 inches, so they're +1, so their 3 becomes a 4 to hit, which they would re-roll for being a marksperson, and unfortunately, no, it's not a hit. To start off the combat phase, my mercenary was going to charge the marksperson here, but my opponent, I believe, has decided to I thought as much. Okay, so they're going to react, and they've actually measured it up already. They're going to put themselves behind the barrels here. This means that I can no longer make the charge. Next charge, my mercenary is going to charge this way around into the cultist. He gets 1 attack, hitting on a 4 with a basic weapon, which hits. Roll to wound, 3 on 3. Okay, so I get a wound on my opponent. Pop 1 there, and they get to attack back. 1 attack hitting on a 4, which does, and then roll into wound 3 on 3, which doesn't. So they'll be running away on a 3+. No, they're not, so I get a free round of attacks, which I miss, so they try and run away again. Again, they don't succeed, so I get to re-roll this for being a mercenary, into a hit. That is unfortunately a critical, and that is the cultist gone. With that, I'm going to roll my dice, go 2 inches, and I'm going to go... I'm actually just going to go and stay here, like so. For my last charge, my healer here is going to try and charge my opponent's Alchemist. Now, they can't see them, so that makes this a blind charge, which means I need to roll equal to or above the healer's intelligence. On a 5, I get it, so I've already measured it up. We're going to just slot them around like so, and then have their 1 attack hitting on a 5 with the spear, which hits. Roll to wound. Ooh, that gets a critical as well. So it's 2 wound on my opponent's Alchemist, and they attack me back. Where they don't hit, 'cause they hit on 3, so they roll to walk away, which they do. And I gather they're going to use that to, go over in that corner. And then I'm going to get 4 inches. And I'm actually going to use that 4 inches to head back around here to the objective. So after some deliberation, my opponent has decided that their apprentice with the staff is going to charge my mercenary. So in they go. They have 1 attack with the staff, hitting on a 3. They'll be wounding me on a 5 or 6. It's damage 2, resistance 3. It's not enough, so I'm going to roll for my 1 attack. Roll that again. It doesn't hit, so I try and run away, which I don't do, so my opponent gets a free attack, which hits. And it wounds. Thankfully, it's only a single wound. But before I do that, I'm going to roll for my shield, because I always seem to forget this. I ignore it on the shield, and I don't run away. So we're back to this again. My opponent rolls to see if they can hit me, which they don't. I still don't run away. They do hit me. Do they wound me? No, because it's only damage 2. And I finally get away. So I'm going to back 2 inches this way. And my opponent's going to roll to see how far they go. They get 3 inches. I'm guessing they're going 3 inches. Yeah, back to the objective. So we come to the end of turn 5. As you can see, there's quite a lot has been going on in this turn. We are about to go into turn 6, which could be the last turn of the game. So I might have to do a bit of sudden objective grabbing in this turn. First of all, we have some rolls for poison, which will be 1 for my mercenary. He's okay. My apprentice is okay, thankfully. And coming all the way over here, my healer fails, so he will take a wound, and my alchemist passes, so it's just the healer this time. Now that we've done the poisoning, it's going to be my determination roll. Hey, I failed, so it has to be, in this case, my apprentice. Next up, it's taken until turn 6, but now my opponent has to roll for determination. Nope, they're okay. Now we're into the initiative phase for turn 6. My opponent, I'll let them roll first, gets a 3, I get a 1, so they go first, and I get 2 reaction tokens. End of the movement phase. On turn 6, we can see that my alchemist and healer have both hopped up into this building. My opponent's cultists are standing off against me to try and hold this objective. My opponent has moved their alchemist round to here, and their apprentice up to here. My mercenary has gone over to here, and then my other poison mercenary is here. Finally, my opponent's marksperson has stayed still. Start of my opponent's shooting phase. The marksperson here was about to fire, but my mercenary here is going to move, and he's going to use his 3 inches to go all the way to... Yeah, he's going to use his 3 inches to go all the way to there. That means... Now, my opponent is still within 4 inches. I couldn't really do much about that, but I'm definitely getting soft cover from this. So my opponent will be -1/+1, so they'll be hitting on a regular 3. Reroll because of marksperson. Okay, so they hit, roll to wound. They do get a wound because it's damage 4 against resistance 3. For my shooting, I'm finally getting a chance to use my solidify. It has a 3-inch range, but that model there is definitely within. So I'm going to see if I can get it to go off on him there. And it doesn't. Last bit of the shooting phase, my healer is going to, again, heal himself. Start the combat phase, my opponent's cultist is going to charge the healer. Straight charge in there. I'm not going to react because I kind of want to have more fights than just one here. So they're going to roll to hit with their bludgeon. 1 attack, hit on a 4. They do get to reroll because they made the charge. No, I'm going to attack back. Hitting on a 5, he's done it quite well so far. He doesn't keep up his good luck, so I've lost. I do back away because there's a 2+ to do so with the healer. However, we've worked it out that unfortunately, because of how the models are spaced out, he can't actually move, and my opponent wants to stay within 3 inches of the objective, so the best they're going to be able to do is move them back like so. For my opponent's next charge, their cultist is going to charge around and fight at the window with my healer. Now I have a spear, which I would mean I would get to attack at the same time anyway, but by charging me at the window, that's the same rule. So the cultist is going to go first. Reroll because they made the charge. Okay, so they've hit, roll to wound. And they get a 4, which would go up to being a 5, so I would take a wound there. I get to attack back, hitting on a 5, which I don't, and then I run away on a 2, which I do. Again, we're in the same situation where I can't actually back away to anywhere. Well, I can back away to there at best. I'll keep an inch away, and my opponent's going to roll to see what they get. They get a 4. They can't hop in because, unfortunately, because of where the Alchemist is, he's also putting a denial area there. For my opponent's next charge, their Apprentice is going to run around the objective and charge into my Mercenary. So they're going to roll to see if they can hit. 1 attack, hitting on a 3. Okay, slightly different, but there you go. 1 attack, hitting on a 3. Which does. 5 and 6 to wound. Which doesn't, so I get to attack back. I do hit. However, it'll be a 5 or 6 because that staff gives them +1 resistance. No, so I'm going to be backing away, and I do. So in that case, I'm going to back away 2 inches this way. And my opponent's going to roll. And they're going to get to go 4 inches, which I guess is going to be taking them mostly back to where they were. Which they can get either there or back in where they were. Okay, so they're going to go up to there. That's fine. For my charges, first of all, it's going to be my Mercenary is going to hop over the barrels and charge into my opponent's marksperson. So I have 1 attack hitting on a 4, which fails to hit. They have 1 attack hitting on a 4 as well, which does. 5 or 6 to wound, which doesn't. So they'll be backing away on a 2+, which they do. And in this case, they'll need to back away like so because they can back away. And then I'm going to roll a 4, and I'm going to head back over to here. Next, my Mercenary here is going to charge into my opponent's Alchemist, who's already wounded. It's going to charge round like so. I have 1 attack hitting on a 4, which hits, and then rolling to wound, damage 3, resistance 3. No, I didn't get a wound. My opponent gets to attack back. They hit, roll to wound. They don't either, so on a 2+, they'll be fleeing combat. Yep, that's fine, they do. So the best they can go is either that way or they're going to go to there. Take their wound with them. And then I'm going to roll to see how far I go. 1 inch, so I'm actually just going to go and take the spot they were. My Alchemist is going to be the next charge. We've worked out that he can come back this way, hop over the wall, and just get within tip touching of the base just there. So I have one attack hitting on a 3, which fails to hit my opponent. They hit with their bludgeon, and then they roll to wound, but they don't. So on a 3+, they'll be running away because I charged, which they do. So I'm guessing they're going to back away along the wall, and then I'm going to go 3 inches. I'm just going to go back to being here. Last charge for me, my healer is going to have to do a blind charge on my opponent's cultist. He gets it, so he's going to come running around like so. One attack hitting on a 5 or 6 with that spear. No, so my opponent gets to attack back. They don't hit either, and they didn't charge, so they don't get that re-roll. They need to roll to run away, which they do. So 2 inches, they're just going to, back themselves along there. I roll a 3, so I'm actually just going to hop back through the window, like so. So that is the end of the turn. As you can see over here, we're fighting over this one objective over here with 2 models on either side at it. And then over here we have this objective in the middle. I have 2 models in range. My opponent has all 3 of theirs in range. Their marksperson is just in by a millimeter. So it is the end of turn 6, which means we have to roll a dice to see if it goes to turn 7. My opponent wants it to end here. I want another turn because I might have a chance to pull it back. And it carries on. First thing in turn 7, I'm going to roll for my poison. So this guy here takes a wound. Down to 2 rather than 1. Then over here, my healer doesn't, and my alchemist doesn't either, so I'm okay. Turn 7, determination roll. I am going to have to roll for my one. I'm okay, just. Turn 7, second determination roll for my opponent. Let's see what they get. They're okay as well. Turn 7 determination, last one of the game. I will roll first. I get a 3, my opponent gets a 2, so they'll be going second with 1 reaction token. Right at the start of the movement phase, before I could even move this mercenary, my opponent's going to fire. Now we've measured, he's just out with 4 inches, so it's going to be a standard shot because he is in the open, hitting on a 3. No, that was the only number they didn't want. End of turn 7 movement phase. As you can see, pretty much all of us have clumped onto this objective, except this marksperson is just in range of this one, and my mercenary is just in range of this one. Start the shooting phase. My healer is going to heal himself for 1 wound. Last bit of shooting from myself, I'm going to try and throw a solidify onto this model here. It goes off this time, so this model here is solidified. Bit of shooting from my opponent is, well, they're out of concoction, so it's going to be crossbow marksperson into my mercenary over here. It will be a 6 to hit, however, with all the penalties included. No, they miss. Very first charge, my alchemist is going to charge into my solidified opponent's cultist. 1 attack, hitting on a 3. It hits. 1 damage 3 against resistance 3. It wounds, and because he is solidified and has suffered a wound while solidified, he is shattered and removed from play. Then I'm going to roll to see how far I go. 2 inches. I'm going to use that to go there. Next charge, my mercenary is going to charge into my opponent's apprentice, going this way, so that if he fails, he's going to get pushed back. 1 attack, hitting on a 4. Nope, my opponent gets 1 attack back, hitting on a 3. Wounding on a 5 or 6, which I can ignore with my shield, which I don't, so I'll be running away, and I do, so I'm going to run away 2 inches this way, like so, and then my opponent's going to roll, see what they get. 6 inches. For my opponent, they have decided they're going to go 3 inches to here, and then 3 inches back to here, so it goes round my model, but gets them just over by this window. For my last charge, my healer is going to, he can see just the head of the alchemist, so he's going to flip around and charge him over the obstacle. So he has 1 attack hitting on a 5, which he does. Rolling to wound, let's see if he can get it. He gets a wound, so that's my opponent's alchemist down to 1 wound remaining of their 4. Then my opponent attacks back, hitting on a 3, which they do. Rolling to wound, which they don't, so they need to run away, which will be on a 2+. which they do, so they're going to have to back away. I'm guessing they're going to want to back away like so to keep over there. And then whatever I roll, 5 inches, I'm going to go back to... yeah, I'm going to go back to here. So my opponent is going to charge their apprentice into my mercenary, like so, and roll their 1 attack, hitting on a 3 with the staff. Fails to hit, I'll retaliate with my attack hitting on a 4. I don't, but I'm a mercenary. I do. 5-6 because of that staff. No, so I need to roll to run away, which I do. And I am going to go... In this case, I'm going to go... full 2 like that. Yeah, I'm going to go to there. My opponent's 4 is going to put them back where they were stood. That is the end of turn 7, and that is also the end of the game. So we're going to see who has each objective. I have this one. My opponent, as we worked out, has this one by a millimetre, and I am just out. Ooh, tape measure. I am just out. And over here, we have measured it up. My opponent has 1, 2, 3 models in range, and I unfortunately only have 2. So that is a 2-1 win to my opponent. So that is the end of another Age of Alchemy battle report. As you can see, it, after starting out quite badly, managed to pull it back, still got a loss in the end, but let's face it, it was pretty close in those last couple of turns. So as we can see here, we have left for me, I had the Alchemist, the 2 Mercenaries, and the healer. He really was the man of the match, so to speak. My opponent had their Alchemist, Apprentice, Cultist, and Marksperson, and their Marksperson, I would say, did a pretty good job himself, keeping me at bay. So, as I said last time, if you've been watching these videos all the way through, that is the 5th battle report, and currently it is 3-2 to my opponent. So, I did promise I would do something for them. What I'm going to do is, I think we're going to have a takeaway this weekend, and it will be my treat, because they've helped me throughout all of this and actually honestly put in the effort that they do kind of deserve it. It only remains for me to say thank you very much for watching. If you would like to get access to the rules, you can head over to Patreon. The link is down below, or it will be in a card at the end of the video, or there'll be a link. If you go there and subscribe to the Novice or Local Hero tiers, which is £4 and £6 per month, you will get access to the rules, the tools, the expansions, and a whole heap of other things. In fact, we're even adding special videos for patrons only, and we are going to be doing little fluff pieces and little bits of lore about the game so that it expands upon the world as it stands. Thank you for watching. Please make sure and check out the previous videos to see how we got to this point, and bit of spoilers in that obviously clearly it was 2 wins to 2 losses, but trust me, watch some of them and see if you can predict which ones actually were losses before they happen. You would be surprised. And that's all from me. So, thank you, and I'll see you next time.